should work. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Weekly Dose of Dano TV with your host here, Dano, giving you the best content that you're going to find on the internet. And thank you so much for joining us today because we have Jeffrey here. And when I tell you his story is absolutely incredible, Jeff, I'm already going to tell you this before we even get started. But in my over 3.5 years of having Weekly Dose of Dano TV, you are going to be my favorite guest because there's so much that we can learn from your story and your journey. And just the fact that you're here talking to us today is nothing short of a miracle. So, Jeff, what do you have to say to the Positivity Posse before we even get started today?
The audience is absolutely going to get the daily dose of Dano for sure. And I'm hoping that that's going to give everyone perspective and make all of our problems and difficulties and challenges put in perspective and seem that much more manageable that you can handle and you'll take steps and overcome.
Wow. Yeah. And I'm really excited about it. You are the epitome of that person to speak on perspectives and just how to keep a positive mindset. So everybody that's joining us today, whether you're joining us on the audio or you're joining us visually here, we have a lot to cover in such a short amount of time. So whatever questions that you do have, please drop it in the comments and we will share it here on Weekly Dose of Dano TV as we go along this amazing episode. So let's just get started for today. And I'm very excited to have you here. Really sit back, feel comfortable, relax, because it's time for another episode of Weekly Dose of Dano. Let's get it, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us again on Weekly Dose of Dano TV. But before we bring Jeffrey on, I'm not sure if it's Deskovic or Deskovic, but he's going to come on and tell me a little bit later to really correct me on what his name is correctly. But I'm so excited to have you here for so many different reasons. Number one, we're going to learn about the power of perspective and what we need to do in order to cultivate that positive mindset to make sure that we're experiencing life to the greatest degree that we can be, no matter the circumstances that are going on in our lives. So just give me 1 second. This auto zoom and this autofocus is going out now. So give me 1 second and let's see if this decides to work correctly. Come on. We have it's showtime. Come on, equipment. The equipment is always technology, how it is. It's always on and off every single week. But like I said, let's talk about what we need to talk about because, the Positivity and Posse, we have to share some time together before we talk about all the great things that Jeffrey has to share with us today. And my piece to you guys is this. It's all about keeping a positive mindset, no matter how difficult the situation may seem. And yes, I know that is fitting for today. But I was having another conversation with a friend of mine who felt like he had no purpose in life. And through a course of a few decisions that he's made, he feels as though he's back on the right track in his life. And he was actually telling me about a conversation that he had with his mom. And he was saying that his mom dropped some golden nuggets for him. And it was this, and I want to share it with you, that even though he wants to be a police officer and he still is going to become one, but even though he's applied to so many different places and things have not worked out the way that he would prefer them to, he says that this is the right path, that, a higher being has set for him. She said God, but if there's somebody out there that doesn't believe in God, just believe in the higher power. And that's the destiny that he's had, that all of these things that have happened to him shouldn't discourage him. They should only prove to him that, hey, even though this is not the way I would prefer it to happen to, it still means that I'm on the right path. And with this new decision that he's taking, I'm really happy to hear that he's actually taking that decision to go into the military, actually. And it's just that he says that the process has been so smooth. It's very free flowing. And that's how he's on the right path as well. So I'm just wanted to share that with you. No matter what situation that you're in right now, I mean, obviously we're going to learn from Jeff's story that it's not as bad as it seems, because when you have, your freedom taken away for 16 years on a crime that you didn't even commit, that can be, kind of the ultimate feeling of things not working out for you. So we'll learn the perspective, especially with the story today, that no matter what goes on in our lives, please understand that it's working out for your greatest and highest good. And everything that happens in your life needs to happen that way so you can learn from it, so you can grow from it, and you can take all of the lessons that you've learned inside of that journey to really go forward with everything else that you need to do. And I know talk is cheap, and I know when you're actually inside of that situation, it may feel like, the walls are caving in and that you might not have another outlet, or this is not what's supposed to be happening. But when you come to terms with it and you accept it and you try to find the value that you need to grab from it, whatever situation it may be, then that is when we can start to move forward to find some solutions to the issues or the problems that we've been having. And we can take those things and move forward with it to really explore the life that we have come on this earth to live, and really to follow our dreams and our passions as well, no matter what that may look like for you. And I know with Jeff, he is the epitome of that, because as you already know, you read in the description, 16 years of serving a crime that he didn't commit, and coming out of it, and now being on the other side of the legal team, and becoming an attorney and founding the Jeffrey Deskovic Foundation and many other programs that he started. There is a lot to learn, and I'm very excited to bring him on. So let's just take a quick look at these comments. We have Jeanette here. She says, #positivity posse. Thank you so much for dropping that. And then, hello, beautiful souls. We do appreciate that every single time. And whatever questions that you may have during the live stream, or even, it doesn't have to be live, even on the afterplay or the review, please drop them in the comments, and we could always get back to them as well. So we can cover any questions that you may have. So it's time to bring Jeff on the show. I have so many questions for him, and hopefully you guys are ready for this, because we're really going to dive deep into kind of the mindset and what it took to get out of that situation that he hasn't been in. We're going to talk about forgiveness. We're going to talk about what the power of having a positive mindset does, and just what fuels Jeff to keep going during his challenging life and his struggles, and how he sees it as a benefit, not as a hindrance to everything that's happened in his life. So everybody, please drop some fire emojis, some whatever you got to do to welcome Jeff onto the show, because it's time to bring Jeff onto the show. Jeff, how you doing today?
I'm great, Dano. I'm great. This is the positivity radiates through the camera, through the computer.
Thank you so much. And it's been years, like, as you know, of just reforming ourselves and really understanding the power of the mind, because no matter what's going on in our external reality, we don't have to conform to that. We imbue the positive meaning that's happening on the outside, and not the other way around. That doesn't dictate who we are. So Jeff, before we even go forward, you have to pronounce your last name for me so I can get it correct.
Deskovic.
Deskovic. All right. So I was wrong on both of the ones that I said. So everybody out there that's curious as well, it is Deskovic. And Jeff, I mean, we have to start from the very beginning. And usually I like to go into the meat and the potatoes of everything, but please set up the floor and what the case was, or everything that you were experiencing. And just talk about the beginning, because I want to talk about one specific question. So give the Positivity Posse everything that they need to know about your story.
Sure. So the year is sure. So the year is 1989. I'm 16 years old. We're in Peekskill, a city in Westchester County, New York. It's the suburbs. And a classmate of mine who I was in two of my classes as a freshman, one as a sophomore. I know her name. She knew mine. That was really the extent of it. We weren't even really on a high basis. She was an immigrant from Colombia, living in the country for about a year and a half, leading a very sheltered life, as I later came to learn, where she never went anywhere unless she was accompanied by her older sister or her parents. And she went missing, and her body was found a couple days later, naked from the waist down. There was very few murders that happened in Peekskill, so this created an atmosphere of fear, rumor, paranoia. Parents were concerned with their own safety as well as the safety of their children. In high school, I kind of lived a double life as a high school student. You know, I didn't think of it that way then, but I realized that that's what it was in hindsight. There was my life after school, where I was one of the main kids in the apartment complex and surrounding areas, where pretty much what I would suggest would usually what we would do. If we're going to play Monopoly, ride bikes, play kickball, play basketball, stickball, tackle football with no pads, whatever I would suggest would usually be the activity that we all did. But that was my life after school. My life in school, the kids were a little bit older than me because I had skipped first grade, and wasn't familiar with them. So I was quiet to myself. I didn't participate in a lot of organized sports. And this made me seem strange to the kids in the high school. In the course of the police investigation, they interviewed many students from the school. Some of them told the police that they might want to talk to me because I didn't quite fit in. This is what got me on the police radar. I was a sensitive teenager. This was my first brush with death, and I had an emotional reaction. And the police thought that that was suspicious since I, barely knew the victim. Yet I wasn't, in a larger sense, I wasn't all that different from other people in Peekskill. I mean, this really shook up the whole city to the point that free mental health counseling was offered to anyone who wanted it. That's how I came on the police radar, and that was the reinforcing factor. And lastly, an additional factor is the Peekskill Police Department. They got a psychological profile from the NYPD, which purported to have the psychological characteristics of the actual perpetrator, and I had the misfortune of matching that. So for about 6 weeks, the police played this cat and mouse game with me, in which they would start off talking to me as a suspect, and when I would get frightened and I'd want to get away from them, they would switch it up. And Jeff as this junior detective helper theme was developed. They learned that I wanted to be a cop when I grew up. And so they would say things like, well, the kids won't talk freely around us, but they will around you. Let us know if you hear anything. Stop in from time to time. They would ask me opinion questions, congratulate me that my opinion was correct. I came from a single parent household. My father was never involved in my life in any aspect, and that intersected with the good cop, bad cop technique in which one officer pretended to be a friend, and I began to look up to him as a father figure. Eventually, they got me to agree to take a lie detector test. They told me that they had some new information which had just come into their file, and they wanted to share that with me, and that would allow me to be even more helpful to them. First, though, I'd have to take and pass the polygraph. So the next day, rather than go report to the high school, I went to the police station for the test. Because it was a school day, my mother and grandmother thought I was in school, hence they didn't call around looking for me. But they drove me across county lines 40 minutes away by car to the town of Brewster, which was in Putnam County, which meant that I wasn't able to leave on my own anymore. I was totally dependent on the police. I did not have an attorney present, and they didn't give me anything to eat the entire time I was there. The polygraphist was actually a Putnam County Sheriff's investigator, but he never identified himself as law enforcement. He was dressed like a civilian, never read me my rights. They gave me a 4-page brochure which explained how the polygraph worked, but then it had a lot of big words in it that I didn't quite understand. But I figured, well, I'm there to help the police, so what does it matter? Let's just get on with it. From there, he put me in a small room. He gave me countless cups of coffee in order to make me nervous. And then he literally wired me up to the polygraph machine, and he launched into his third-degree tactics. So he invaded my personal space. He raised his voice at me. He kept asking me the same questions over and over again. And as each hour passed, my fear increased in proportion to the time. Towards the end, he said, what do you mean you didn't do it? You just told me through the test results that you did. We just want you to verbally confirm it. So when he said that to me, that really shot my fear through the roof. And at that point, the officer who had been pretending to be my friend, he came in the room and told me that the other officers were going to harm me. He was holding them off. He couldn't do so indefinitely, that I had to help myself. Then he said, just tell them what they want to hear. You can go home afterwards. You're not going to be arrested. Being young, naive, frightened, 16 years old, I wasn't thinking about the long term. I was just concerned with my safety in the moment. I was in fear of my life. The fact that I didn't know where I was and no one else knew where I was either loomed quite large in my mind. Then there was this possibility of harm that he threw in the air and this false life preserver that he threw me. So I made up a story based on the information they gave me that day and the 6 weeks run up to it. By the time it was all said and done, I had collapsed on the floor, crying in a fetal position. Obviously, I was arrested. I was charged with a murder and rape.
Wow. Wow. And that is a lot to unpack and uncover. But you know, I couldn't even imagine being 16 years old, just so scared, and my family not knowing where I was, and following the advice of these people that told you to just do what to do, and you'll go back home to get your safety. And at that point, you're going to do anything and everything that you can to find that safety again, and to just go on living the life that you were living of a normal 16-year-old child. But there's one moment in particular that I really kind of want to dive into, and it's going to be a very personal moment for you. So I know that obviously you probably had a hearing and everything, and the judge ruled as these words are coming out of his mouth. I would like you to kind of go into what you were thinking at the time as you're hearing these words. So when the judge is giving you your sentence, kind of tell us what you were going through or what you were experiencing for a crime that you never even commit.
Sure. I just want to quickly mention before the trial, the DNA didn't match me, and my lawyer moved to dismiss the case. The judge denied that. At the trial, the officers left out the threat and false promise out of their testimony. That interrogation had not been videotaped, not audio taped, no signed confession, just the cop's word for it. So they left the threat and false promise out of their story. The prosecutor got the medical examiner to claim that he remembered that he forgot to document medical findings that he claimed showed the victim was promiscuous, which is how the prosecutor argued against the DNA. He mentioned someone by name that he claimed had slept with the victim, but he never called that person as a witness. He never had a DNA test result. He just made the unsupported argument to the jury. My lawyer essentially didn't defend me. He never interviewed or called as a witness my alibi, never explained to the jury the significance of the DNA not matching me, never used that to challenge the confession, never cross-examined this medical examiner, sometimes told the jury that I never confessed, other times saying that I confessed, but it was coerced. And still other times he said that it was a false confession. He would not allow me to testify. He should have not represented me because of a conflict of interest. So this other youth that the prosecutor was falsely saying had slept with the victim was represented by another member of that public defender agency, specifically by the lawyer who's supposed to be supervising him on my case. So that conflict prevented us from calling him as a witness. It prevented us from asking him for a DNA sample. Lastly, the judge allowed the polygraphist to repeatedly tell the jury that I lied when I denied committing the crime. So definitely that was prejudicial. So I was ultimately wrongfully convicted. And as you were asking me about, on the day of the sentencing, I begged the judge to overturn the verdict because I was innocent. I referenced the DNA, and he told me on the record, maybe you are innocent. But instead of him overturning the conviction, which he could have done by reversing any of the rulings he had made against me at trial, he instead took the easy way out, which is he gave me a 15 to life sentence. I had been arrested, I had been charged as an adult, tried as an adult, and therefore given an adult sentence and sent to a maximum security prison. This was all when I was 17. I turned 16 when I was arrested, turned 17 shortly before the trial, which I lost. And so I was therefore imprisoned at that point.
Wow, this story is just something that you would find out of somebody's nightmare. I mean, that you didn't do this, but everybody and their mother is against you, and that's supposed to be working on your side. Just didn't happen that way. So, can you tell us about, what? Well, so did you think that your life was over at this point before you went in, and like, did you ever have any hope while being inside of the system that you would ever get out? Because I know later on when you tell your story, which I'm going to get to, you're going to talk about 7 appeals that you had going through it that didn't work out. But, as you're in there, maybe your first year, your first 2 years, did you ever think that you were going to get out of the situation you were in?
Yeah. So initially when I was convicted, I couldn't believe what I heard. I certainly couldn't believe that I was sentenced. So it took a while for me to even accept the idea that I was even there in prison. But that having been said, shortly afterwards, I kind of snapped out of it, and I had my hope. See, that was a key thing of how I got through everything. Belief in God was one thing. A second thing was that I figured I just have to hold on just for a year or two to the next appeal would happen, which I was sure that I was going to win. I didn't trust lawyers to defend me anymore, so I used to go to the law library, and learning the law gave me a sense of empowerment. And I would study I would read about other cases where somebody was exonerated, and I would study who helped them, what route did they take. I used that as inspiration to keep going. I minimized the loss that I was experiencing, so I didn't waste time. So I got GED. I completed an associate's degree. I completed an additional year of schooling towards the bachelor's. At the time, the funding was cut. Learned to type. You learned computer repair. Completed plumbing. Learned how adults learned, and worked as a teacher's aide. Worked in food service. I got many certificates, and from 1998 to 2006, I read 3 or 4 nonfiction books a week. So I put my time to work for me, determined to minimize the loss that I was experiencing.
Yeah.
So, but I want to mention one other thing though. But going to the hope thing, that was essential to get through it, because I had to keep fighting off feelings of hopelessness, helplessness, thoughts of giving up, and occasionally thinking about suicide. But I knew that since no one was coming to my rescue, that I had no choice but to hold it together so that I could maximize this extreme long shot, that I could somehow find somebody who could help build that bridge between me and the legal help that I needed.
Yeah, and it's so important that you did have that mindset of positivity and knowing that it was all going to work out for you, even in the midst of it. Like you said, I mean, that's what that happens with everybody when we kind of have those feelings of helplessness or loss, or things, thinking that things aren't working out. But we have to snap out of it. And I know even myself, not to compare myself to your journey, but when it happens to me, we have to do everything that we can to get out of it. So whether it's surrounding yourself with positive content or positive media or positive people around us to say, yo, stop thinking like that. Instead, go this way. Now, it was a little bit different because you didn't have that person, which makes your story even that much more incredible to me, to know that you had to take life, by the balls, so to speak, as layman's terms, but to really persevere through everything. So let's fast forward a little bit in your journey to your first day out. So can you tell us, I mean, 1998 to 2006, I can only imagine the culture shock that you experienced because technology was on the move and things were so much different from those years. So can you tell us a little bit about the culture shock that you may have experienced on your first day out?
I definitely experienced it. Sure. And by the way, the 98 to 2006, that was just the years I was reading nonfiction books. The total, the span of my incarceration was from 1990 to 2006. So 16
Wow.
years along the way, losing 7 appeals, writing letters for 4 years, looking for help, never getting a response other than the occasional no, going to the parole board, getting denied there, largely because I maintained my innocence rather than express remorse and take responsibility. So now getting into the culture shock. So the world was much different when I was released than what it was when I was originally incarcerated. To give some examples, GPS, cell phone, internet hadn't been created. Culture was different, and cities and towns looked far different. So cumulatively, those 3 aspects made it feel like I was in a parallel world. Not sure if you want me to go through the other challenges of reintegrating, or if you want to
Yeah,
ask
of
another
course.
question.
Yes,
Okay,
please.
sure. All right, great. So I had to repair relations with my extended family because the overwhelming majority of them never came to see me. The couple of sets of aunts and uncles that did, they'd visit but disappear for 3 years and continue on with that. My brother, who's 3.5 years younger than me, came 3 times in 16 years, not at all in the last decade. My mother and grandmother used to come consistently. My grandmother passed away 5 or 6 years into the process. And in the last 5 or 6 years, I was lucky if I saw my mother once every 6 months. So for most intents and purposes, though not totally, I essentially did the time on my own. So hence the importance of being able to repair relations with everybody. Aside from that, I went to mental health experts, four professionals 4 times a week for 6 years in dealing with the psychological after effects of my experience, even in adjusting to everyday life. I had to fight against the stigma. You were in prison for 16 years wrongfully. Yes, but you were there for 16 years. So how much of that rubbed off on you? Is it safe to be alone someplace with you? Beyond that, I was always passed over for gainful employment. It seemed like, you know, the managers, the decision makers, they wanted someone who could hit the ground running rather than a little bit of patience for on the job training. They wanted someone that understood the technology, which obviously that was not me. So consequently, you know, it was difficult to have money coming in. I lacked stability of housing. At one point, a couple of weeks away from the homeless shelter. Thank God, Mercy College, now Mercy University, which gave me a scholarship to finish the bachelor's. They allowed me to live on campus. Lastly, I had some particular challenges because the years of my life that the wrongful incarceration spanned from age 17 to 32. So I didn't graduate high school, didn't go to prom, didn't finish my education at a traditional age, wasn't on my way to a career, possibly financial freedom. You know, didn't get married, have kids. So I had to. I got my license for the first time as a 32-year-old adult. Got my license for the first time. Lived alone for the first time. Went shopping for the first time. Wrote a check the first time. Had to balance a budget for the first time. So definitely, all of those things were very difficult, and it was frankly very, very lonely as well.
Yeah. And, you know, there's a lot to unpack there because I can only imagine like that's everything that a person has, you know, currently in their life or most people have. You didn't have any of that. So, you know, no family, no support system. You know, you only had yourself and just your will and your sheer spirit. So if you had to, you know, a credit kind of your fighting spirit or just your just knowing this that you were going to get through it no matter what it took, what would be like your top two things that you can contribute your faith to?
Look, just never giving up. I mean, that was a big thing for me. Just never give up. I'm not going to quit. I'm going to find a way. I'm going to try things that have been done before. I'm going to try non-traditional things, but no matter what, I'm going to keep moving. So I think that was really a big thing. And the second thing is I always kept moving towards self-improvement. So I don't believe that things are going to be okay just because, like a pie in the sky. I think that you have to work really hard to then put yourself in a position where a miracle could happen for you, that, you know, you'll meet the right person at the right time or the right door will open, but only if you're working towards that, not if you're sitting back idle doing nothing. So all
Mhm.
of the decisions that I made along the way contributed to where I ultimately arrived at, you know, with a nonprofit organization that has freed 14 people in the same position that I'm at, that has helped pass 3 laws and another 6 as key members of the coalition group. It could happen to you, becoming a lawyer. So my decisions along the way to accept the offer of working, of taking finishing the bachelor's degree, uh, working hard in the interview process of an independent paper. And then when they offered me a chance to write an article, putting my all into that, hoping that they would give me a chance to write another one. And then when I couldn't get into law school, deciding to get a master's degree with the idea that that would help me to be a better advocate. And when I finally got some compensation 5 years in, deciding, look, I want to go to the next level. I want to move from being an individual advocate, speaking, writing, doing media, meeting with electeds. I want to keep that up, but I want to be able to free people in the same position I was in, because I could not forget about the men and women that I metaphorically left behind. So using some of the money to start the organization, you know, and then taking the advice when I instructed a group of judges on some wrongful conviction topics. And in the hallway, one of the judges said, "Jeff, you know the stuff better than lawyers, even better than some judges. That's why we have you here. Why don't you just go and get that certificate, get the piece of paper, get the credential, go to law school, be a lawyer?" Taking that advice, struggling and working really, really hard in law school, but always coming up with a plan. Look, oh my God, I'm going to fail everything, but you know what? I'm going to try. I'm not going to quit. Here's my plan. I got 5 subjects. I got 7 weeks. That means I have to, in this week, I got to master this. I got to move on to the next topic, and so on and so forth. And look, I'm going to start out with what's easiest. Let me start there and build some confidence, build some momentum, and keep going. So all those things, you know, if I didn't keep making those positive steps and keep moving, then I wouldn't have culminated into the position where I am today, you know, being a lawyer.
Wow. And, these are the things that we talk about week in and week out on Weekly Dose of Dano TV. And everybody exemplifies those positive traits that you say in their own way and right. But I really love your story because against all the odds, you decided to do that and you decided to believe in that. Number one, you bet on yourself because, like you said, you knew that nobody was going to come to help you. So just that belief on yourself is, I think, one of the best keys that we can have throughout this life. And then number two, just that spirit of fighting where there's so many people nowadays where the one minor inconvenience will happen to them and then they think that it's a bad life. But really, it just might be a bad day or a bad even 5 minutes. And then they'll just lay down and die. But Jeff, man, I love the fact that you just keep going. And even today, like you keep these same traits. You're not taking life for granted. And you are just helping other people along the way with your services of helping people that have been wrongly convicted and all the other organizations and foundations that you are a part of and have been a part of throughout all of these years. So we have to hear a word, Jeff, from our first sponsor, but there is one question through all of this that we just unpacked with you that I need to ask you. So here it is. Is there anything in your entire journey that you would change about your story, or would you leave everything the way that it is?
I would leave everything as it is. If I had a time machine, I could go backwards and I wouldn't spend the time wrongfully imprisoned. Yeah, obviously I'd do that, but that's not an option. So that being said, and being as though I'm through it all, okay, I would not change anything. And I really believe that I know actually that my purpose in the world is to do this type of work. And that's how I make sense of what happened to me. And with that, I have a sense of inner peace.
Wow. I love that. So everybody, this is Jeff. I hope you're loving this content just as much as I am, because here on Weekly Dose of Dano TV, I'm telling you, just check out some other episodes and you'll see that Jeff is one of the more severe situations that have happened. And just the fact that if he's able to get through it, Jeff, give me a yes or no if you agree with this. If you can get through it, so can everybody else.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I love that. See, so everybody, I mean, it doesn't matter what life is throwing at you. That's my biggest tip to you throughout this entire episode. And I know Jeff is just dropping golden nugget after golden nugget for everybody, but seriously, don't let these outer circumstances define you. If you got a D on that test, or if you just totally totaled your car, or if things just aren't working out the way that you prefer them to, that is okay, because it's all working out for their greatest and highest good. And like I said, here's just our first our first commercial that we have to play from our sponsors, and then we'll be right back with some more great content here on Weekly Dose of Dano TV. So here it is. We're Great Success. Thank you so much for sponsoring us. And everybody, go check out their website as well.
At Great Success, it's our job to make sure that your child succeeds in school, regardless of the subject or grade level. Our tutors are trained professionals who know how to promote learning and encourage results. Whether you are looking for help with SAT, ACT prep, private and group tutoring, K through 3 reading programs for your child, or educational consulting and college counseling, here at Great Success, we can help you find the right answer. Visit GreatSuccess.com to learn more about our in-person and online program options. Great Success, where your child's success is our business.
Everybody, thank you to Great Success for sponsoring Weekly Dose of Dano TV. You can find them at greatsuccess.com, and the owner and founder is Mark Hoberman, which, as you know, that is my co-founder to the Power of Choices, which you'll see their advertisement as well later, where me and Mark go into schools to teach kids about mental resilience, substance prevention, anti-bullying, and things like that. So go check out his website if you need some more information on tutoring or anything for the betterment of your kids in schools as well. So Jeff, we're going to get back to your great story. And there was one more question, and then we'll move forward towards like your professional career that I forgot to ask you throughout this entire process. So everything that you went through, right? When you got out, were you like owed anything, or did you get anything as like reparations for your experience, or did they even say like, or was it just like, sorry, my bad, and then you were just living your life?
So they just said They said, so I was fortunate. Most people in my position don't get an apology. Actually, you usually typically get a kick in the pants. Well, we don't say he's innocent. We just say that if the trial were held now, we couldn't prove him or her guilty. So, but fortunately, that wasn't my situation. I did get an apology, but I nonetheless was released with nothing. That's one big thing is that, the reentry services. I mean, I believe strongly that anyone that is exonerated should get housing, cost of living, doctor, dental, mental health, classes on technology, access to public transportation, job training, job placement. But currently, in general, across the U.S., there's nothing offered. People just released with nothing. That having been said, in New York, you can seek compensation. So I did that. I had the civil rights firm file for me, seeking compensation in state court. After 5 years, I was able to receive something. And I also simultaneously filed a federal civil rights lawsuit. And, everybody settled with me from the city of Peekskill to Westchester County to Westchester Legal Aid. And then I went to trial with Putnam County and I won a jury verdict there. So I used some of that money just to pay it forward, hence starting the organization.
Wow, that's so beautiful. And I know that money isn't everything, and I'm pretty sure it doesn't really repair everything that you went through, but it's a great place to start. And like you said, do you use that extra fuel that you receive to start your foundation and everything else that you've been a part of? So please, I want you to tell us about the Jeffrey Deskovic Foundation and why you started it.
It's a nonprofit organization named after me. It's intended to be a legacy. It's a far outlive me. And our purpose is to free people in the same position I was once in, while also working to prevent what happened to me from happening to others, hence the policy work. And as part of that policy work, we do public education. So I speak around the country, some internationally. I do regular media interviews, and I occasionally publish op-eds. And we work in coalition, not only with It Could Happen to You, help being involved and helping to develop our New York chapter, our Pennsylvania chapter, the California chapter, Right to Remain Silent Coalition, serving on Global Advisory Council for Restorative Justice International. So we like working in collaboration and in coalition. And then we do a little bit on the reintegrative side. That part of it is a modest program, but if people have need like emergency funding, like sometimes we've had to help purchase some clothes for people to get started, winter clothes, a television, unexpected bill, just on an emergency, we are able to assist with that as well.
Wow. And that's beautiful. And I see here, there's so many things that we have to talk about. But right here, it says in 2022, a record-setting 273 were exonerated in the United States since 1989. Exonerees have spent over 28,000 years in prisons for a crime that they did not commit. So, Jeff, I know that since you're helping these people that have been wrongly convicted get out, what's the process like in order to select a case to say, okay, we're going to choose you in order to get you exonerated from your wrongful conviction?
So they reach out. Typically, the applicants reach out to us. Occasionally, their friends, family, or advocates reach out to us, and we send out a questionnaire. And then they fill it out, and then they send certain legal docs. So we get the direct appeal brief from both sides, and we get the police reports. And the first thing we do is we compare the answers in the questionnaire to the factual section of the appeal briefs, both from the prosecution and the defense. And so once we're sure that all the answers haven't left anything out, we then ask ourselves two questions. Number one, do we believe the innocence claim? And that involves evaluating what was used as evidence of guilt. So we know what the patterns are in cases that ended in DNA exoneration where it was a confession involved, or misidentification, or an informant. So we know what the patterns are from those cases. So we have that in mind when we're looking at what was used as evidence to convict someone in the first place in the case we're considering. So that question, do we believe the innocence claim? And number two, do we see a potential route to victory? So that means, we have to find something new that would have probably ended in a different outcome. So if it's a case where DNA testing is available, that would mean, is there something to test? Is there blood, semen, saliva? Is there a clothing item that somebody left behind that they possibly sweated in? That's the DNA cases. In the non-DNA cases, We investigate alternative suspects. We look for similar crimes in nearby area. We file freedom of law requests, and often documents that are supposed to have been turned over before but were buried come to the surface, and now that could serve as a new investigative lead. If we think that anyone lied when they testified, we re-interview them, and sometimes witnesses bubble to the surface that weren't known before, and we look and see were any of the people involved in the case, has there been any misconduct from them that's bubbled to the surface in some other unrelated case.
Mm-hmm.
So that's our process. So, we have to believe the innocence claim. We have to see a potential way to win.
Yeah, and I can only imagine what you have to go through that, because a lot of people out there, you might correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of people say that they didn't do it, but the record shows otherwise. So trying to see who to believe and who not to believe is something that I know is very challenging. But obviously, you've had a lot of success with your experience with it, and you know what to look for since you have been through it as well. So thank you for helping these people. And I know a simple thank you may not be much when you're changing the actual realities. Yeah.
It means a lot. Listen, the journey is often long and it's hard, and words of encouragement, fortify me and people like me in the field as we continue on the journey helping others. So those words mean a lot. Please always say them.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And you've also, there's so many things that you've done. Like I said, this hour is just packed with so much golden nuggets that you can provide with everybody. But you've also helped pass 3 laws in your efforts to really help people or just everybody to avoid the wrongful conviction. So could you tell us about 3 of those laws? And I know everything that you've done is probably helps a lot, and I know you have so much of an attachment to each, but do you have a favorite of the 3 would you explain to us?
Sure. So the 3 laws we passed: videotaping interrogations from beginning to end, better, and keeping in mind that coerced false confessions have caused wrongful convictions in 29% of the cases. Identification reform, so using more reliable procedures for like a lineup, that's caused wrongful convictions in 71%. And the other one is DNA database expansion. So my favorite law, and we did pass 6 working in coalition. My favorite law is actually one of the ones we passed in coalition with the coalition group. It could happen to you, which Foundation is part of, and I'm an advisory board member of. So we passed the country's first Commission on Prosecutor Conduct. So it's the independent oversight board that can investigate allegations of prosecutorial misconduct. So it would give victims of injustice a place to go to have their claims looked at. And we're also hoping that it will deter prosecutors from engaging in misconduct, because right now, you can't sue them. They certainly don't face any criminal charges. They don't suffer any professional consequences. Then there is no independent body that can investigate them. So having that oversight, every profession down to the barber, has an oversight board, standards that are in place that you have to adhere to. Otherwise, the board will look into, you'll be hearing from them. So, but not so the prosecutors. So hence passing that. That one is my favorite. Second favorite is we did help pass discovery reform. So discovery pertains to sharing information between the prosecution and defense automatically early in the process within the first month. Whereas previously, the prosecutors would wait until the eve of a hearing, the eve of a trial, and then turn everything over. And even then, it would only be as to witnesses they were planning to call at a hearing, at a trial. So obviously, that's not enough time to analyze, to investigate, to incorporate into a strategy. So we took New York from being one of the worst states in terms of discovery and, made them into one of the best.
Wow. And that's so beautiful, too. Just the fact that since you've gone through it, now you can help everybody else avoid those situations as well. We just have to hear a word from our second sponsor for today, which is the Power of Choices. And then after that, we have some more great content that we need to cover, because I have so many questions for you in such a short amount of time, and we need to get to them. So everybody, please make sure that you're dropping all of your questions and comments inside of the chats, and we will get to them, I promise you. And we just enjoy this word from our second sponsor for today, the Power of Choices.
we do is very interactive, but very, very powerful because, look, yeah, I was an educator for 30 years. I don't believe in just academic education. The lack of character education, which is what we do, changes a culture, and it doesn't take 3 months or 3 years to do it.
We are the guys that come in that will teach these kids everything that they need in order to really be the best version of themselves and to get the skills to succeed in life, no matter what life throws at them. That was the power of choices. I know you all love to see my face over and over again, but that is what we do outside of Weekly Dose of Dano in order to teach kids about mental resilience, substance prevention, anti-bullying, and everything that your school might need or program. Doesn't have to be a school or organization that you might need in order to create a better culture for the students, the teachers, the parents, and everybody that's involved, so we can really help people understand what it takes to be successful and how to overcome adversity in any stage of their life. So Jeff, I know you have 4 tips for us, and we are going to get to that as well. But I have one final question in relation to your story, and it's about forgiveness. And I was reading this post the other day, and I don't even know if the story was true or not. I think it might have been a fake story that, ChatGPT created, and it's been circling around on the internet. But it was basically that there was a dad. There were 2 dads. One dad was a police officer, and the other one was a regular citizen. I don't even want to share the story because I don't, let's just scratch it because I don't even know if it's true or not. But anyway, when it comes to your story, Jeff, did you ever end up forgiving the perpetrator that actually, committed the crime?
I did. So really quickly, I'll share, and this is kind of my proudest moment as a human being. Actually relates to him. So the setting is, and we're in the federal courthouse. We're doing a deposition. It's in the context of my civil rights lawsuit, and my lawyer called him as a witness. So the idea was we wanted to prove that the police coerced me into a false confession because their theory of the crime matched my false confession. So we figured, well, if we could show her the crime actually was committed, that helps to illustrate that it's a coerced confession and that they gave me the details. So I'm sitting about 5 or 6 feet away from him, and we're coming up now close to lunchtime, and my lawyer elbows me, and he's got like a mischievous grin on his face, and he says, "Yo, they're gonna burn him." And I said, "What are you talking about? They're gonna burn him?" Yeah, he's not gonna eat. And then there's a chuckle. And what do you mean he's not gonna eat? And so my lawyer says, "What do you care? He killed 2 people. One of them he also raped, and then he was content to let you stay in prison for 16 years for his crime. Why do you care?" And so without hesitating, I said, that's why he's in prison. His punishment is the loss of freedom. It's not to be mistreated while he's there. He's going to eat. As a matter of fact, you're going to make sure that he eats. You're going to ask him that. And if you don't, I will. And when we came back from after lunch, he was asked that, he confirmed that he ate and that he drank, and the proceeding continued as it was. But dehumanization was not an option, and that had more to do with me and me being true to myself and my core values. He just happened to be the recipient of it, but it was done for me and in keeping within my humanity.
That's a beautiful story, because as we've seen in other cases, inside of the courtroom, the victim or the family of the victim would go and attack other people, but you decided to set a precedent, and I think we can all learn from that power of forgiveness is so true. And Jeff, I'm going to say this because I know that you believe in God as well. Imagine if God didn't forgive us of the things that we've done and that the wrongdoings that we've done on this time. Imagine if He had that same attitude towards us. So they always say that an eye for an eye and the world goes blind, but it's very important to really have that sense of forgiveness, because that is what we can do in order to come to terms and come to peace with everything that's going on inside us, and then we can move forward to really change the world in a positive direction, like you have done time and time again, Jeff. So thank you for everything that you've done. And you said that you wanted to share with us some 4 tips that you have, or just a few tips in general you want to share with us. What is it that you wanted to share with us?
Sure. So one, don't be angry. Like I'm often asked, are you angry? But I'm not, because I want to enjoy my life as much as I can. And I can't do that while simultaneously being angry or bitter. I felt like I've lost so much as it was. Why would I want to, in effect, lose the rest of my life? And it's not like if I'm angry, I'm going to be impacting the people that I'm angry at. I would really be the only loser in that scenario. And the vehicle that allows me to actualize that is I take that energy and it's channeled into the advocacy work. So that's one tip. A second thing, I enjoy the small things. I enjoy just the feeling of the sun on my face, some fresh air, the freedom of travel. I mean, the options and choices that we have just as a result of being free. So that. A third thing, I hope that my story can put problems into perspective, that they are that much, they're manageable when you think about my extreme situation versus whatever challenge, not to say it's not significant, but that you can overcome. And I think about my journey, of being wrongfully convicted, the time in prison, difficult 5 years afterwards, and even struggles along the way, that I've had leading up to now. And I've been home for 18 years now. I've come up with this universal formula, which I'll impart. So number one, have a goal. Number two, have a realistic plan, meaning you should be able to look at the plan 3 or 4 different ways and say to yourself, well, yeah, I could see how this might work. Because who wants to carry out a plan if you don't think that the plan can work? Next one, be flexible. Remember, the goal's the goal. The plan is not the goal. So if an unexpected door opens opens for you, and it's bringing you towards that goal, you got to walk through it and keep going. Don't be afraid of hard work. I don't believe it's going to all just turn out right just because. I think you got to put yourself in position for a miracle to happen, and that door will open. The right person will find you at the right time in the right way. And no excuses. There might be reasons, legit reasons, why something is more difficult, but no reason why you can't accomplish it. You just have to want it hard enough. As a sports term, you got to leave it all out on the field. And lastly, never ever give up. And when I find that I can't go on anymore, I say to myself, this might be the key moment right here. This might be where I was on the verge of a breakthrough. But because I quit, I'm not going to make it. So you know what? Even though I can't keep going, I'm going to keep going anyway, just to see what happens on the other side. And then when you make it, reach back and help somebody in that same position that you were in. You'll be making a difference. It'll be healing. It'll be cathartic. It'll make your suffering count for something.
Wow. Those are kind of the most fire tips that I've ever heard. And I know I give some great tips, but man, you kind of summed it up all in that great point. I mean, that's everything that they need to say. And just to kind of summarize your entire life in those few bullet points that you can give to other people, I think we need to do everything that we can to follow those steps and see what happens, right? Because if they're in a place right now that you're experiencing things that are going wrong, or they're not the way that you prefer them to, and you're doing the same stuff over and over, and you're not following your dreams, well, everything that you are doing, the result of what you're experiencing, and that's just everything that life is throwing back at you, right? If you're not, abundant in financial terms, or you're not going through great relationships with your family, you just don't have a life filled with happiness, joy, and love, then stop. You need to change something, right? And obviously, with the tips that Jeff just gave us, try those tips, even if it's just for a month, right? Of 30 days, and then see the different results that life starts to give you. And if you don't change anything in your life and you're tired of receiving the same results, Jeff just gave you the blueprint and the secret in order to live that life of purpose, love, passion, and just overall freedom and joy. So Jeff, I really love those tips. Thank you for sharing that as well. And I agree with a lot of your tips as well. So just make sure that you are following everything that you need to do in your life. And Jeff, if there's if somebody forgets and they want to reach out to you, where can they find some different places that they can reach you at?
Sure. First of all, my website, very easy to remember, www.deskovic, DESKOVIC.org. There is a web form there that you can fill out. I get those emails. Also on Instagram, Deskovic Foundation. I am on Facebook, Jeffrey Deskovic. I have my personal profile, which is public. And then I have my public figure page, so I copy things over so everyone can keep up. And the Jeffrey Deskovic Foundation for Justice also has a Facebook page. We are on TikTok, so people can reach me that way. If you loved what you heard today on this episode, I wanted to share with you that there is a documentary short called Conviction, which is available on Amazon Prime. It's about my life post exoneration and becoming a lawyer. My ultimate dream, and by the way, I believe in chasing down dreams, trying to turn dreams into a reality, and I know that is better than just staying safe and never trying and always wondering what if. So my dream is to have a chapter of the Jeffrey Deskovic Foundation for Justice in each state and ultimately in each country, because I really see this as a worldwide issue. Imagine with me, if there were 25,000 people that were willing to sacrifice $3 to $5 a month on a recurring monthly basis on our Patreon page. That would give us close to $1 million. We would be able to get additional attorneys, paralegals, investigators, other essential personnel. We could work on freeing even more people, and we could work on pursuing policy changes aimed at making the system more accurate in more than just New York, California, and Pennsylvania.
Wow. So everybody, please go support Jeff and everything that he's been doing. And finally, I want to wrap up the show with a quote, if you don't mind, Jeff. And it talks about that idea of anger that you were talking about earlier, that people thought you have, which you don't, which is a beautiful thing. So here's that quote. It's by Buddha, and here it goes. Holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. And
right. I can't agree more. That's put in such a eloquent and profound way. Yes, I believe in that 100%. I affirm that. I live that. I believe that to my core, for sure.
I love that. So everybody, thank you so much for sharing this hour with us on Weekly Dose of Dano TV to hear about more of Jeff's incredible story. And I think we might have to have a part 2, Jeff, if you don't mind, because there's so many other questions.
I would love to.
Yeah,
I would love to. Yeah, for sure. You know how to reach me.
Yeah, well, we'll set that up because you do so many different trainings when it comes to cadets, so many school engagements, and your time.
And also train my time as a professor, and training other types of lawyers who don't work in the criminal justice space, and not within even wrongful conviction, because that's like a specialty within criminal law itself.
Yeah, so we have a lot more that we have to discuss. So we'll set that up for you shortly for the Positivity Posse and to my Positivity Posse. Again, thank you for coming on to hear about Jeff's incredible story. And hopefully, I trust that you found a lot of value in this today, that we can take Jeff's tips, my tips as well, to really implement it in our everyday journey to really achieve peace, happiness, and to live everything that we've come on this earth to live out. So Jeanette says right here as well, thank you for sharing your story, Jeff. And thank you for commenting, Jeanette, and being a part of the Positivity Posse as well. And I will see you next week, everybody. Stay safe. And I'll see you next week for another episode of Weekly Dose of Dano. Thank you again, Jeff. You are absolutely amazing, and I appreciate you so much. To my Positivity Posse, same thing. I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you next week. Peace.